What's going on, true believers? Chris Mack coming at you with an action figure I've been dying to review, but backlog, have to just take it as we go. Today we're going over the Marvel Legends Cable Sasquatch Build-A-Figure Wave Deadpool figure. And I remember I got this at a Comic-Con a couple years ago, and I've just loved it. Every time I've taken it out and posed it around and photographed it, it's an amazing figure. If you want to pick Cable up, please, first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if anybody has traded one in. If not, I checked the online route, sold out on like Big Bag Toy Store and Dorkside. So you're more than likely going to have to go the secondary route. So fingers crossed that no one gouges you. So you see the cool Deadpool logo there, Cable, Sasquatch there on the top. Come around to the side, and this rendition of Cable is absolutely amazing. I think that's such a gorgeous art piece. The lack of color with the grays and the red, superb. Come around to the back, get a decent looking okay product shot, get a read up, so I'll make sure to get a close up on that so you can read it at your convenience. Same with the figures from the wave. Come back around this way, same gorgeous artwork, cool Deadpool varnish logo there on the top, nothing on the bottom. So with that said, let's get Nathan Summers out of his packaging and get a closer look at him. And here's the man named Cable out of the packaging. And I just love this figure every time I get him out and start posing him. As you can see, for a bigger, beefier dude, you get him on one leg and you just get that 90s Liefeld action going on. And that's what I love about this, because this is how I remember Cable when he first came out compared to now, where he's more lean. And that's just not Cable to me. But anyway, gorgeous, well done figure. There's all sorts of stuff to talk about with him, so let's get him off the stand and get a closer look at him. Backstory on Cable. First appearance, New Mutants number 87, March 1990. And that book is getting so hard to find. I'm glad that I got a second print, but it'd be nice to have a first print. But right now at the prices, hey, you. So essentially what happens is Cable comes in, takes the remaining New Mutants, and he militarizes them. And that happens in the pages of New Mutants 100, leading into X-Force number 1. He is the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor, and he was infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse during the 1991 Endgame event, which ran through X-Factor issues 65 through 68. And so Cyclops, determined to save his son, gives Nathan to the Askani. The Askani were as a warrior from the future, and Cyclops does that so that Nathan can survive the virus. During the events of the Executioner song, Stryfe, which is a clone of Cable, poses as him and attacks Xavier with the techno-organic virus again. Cable sacrifices himself to stop Stryfe in the end, which leaves Scott and Jean wondering if Cable was actually their son, and they just had to sacrifice him again. Now, what's nice is that Jean and Cyclops are actually reunited. They're transported to the future by Askani to protect Nathan from Apocalypse, since the 1994 miniseries called The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. So Cyclops, Cable has another one of those histories that's kind of all over the place, but when you start getting the books, they're such fun, and a lot of them 90s cheese with some good writing intermingled. I've gone over a lot of the X-Forces and New Mutants, so I'll make sure to throw them around this review so you can check them out at your leisure. Now, for the accessories that this figure comes with, he starts with a little tiny pistol. And it doesn't look too bad. I mean, the attention to detail on it is cool. I like that it shows all the mechanics. You got the trigger guard, the trigger. I like the design on the handle. And it just has that very cool futuristic look to it, because when Cable returns to the present, he's an old man. He's fought this future Apocalypse war, so he brings back future tech with him. This can go right here in the holster. So I'm always thankful for weapon storage on figures. Now the next one it comes with is a medium-sized gun. And this is kind of more the one that you would see in when Cable was first introduced. This looks more like the gun that he used. But you can kind of see what the barrel turns. Looks like a 6-shot I kind of wish, even though this has like a nice dark gunmetal gray to it, I wish that they maybe put some light silver in there, or maybe some like battle damage, like some rustic stuff, just to show that it's been through the ringer, and maybe like some brown around where the handle's wrapped. But still, just seeing all the little mechanics on it, I like that. You can see the sights, the scope, just good stuff like that. And what sucks about this weapon is there's really no weapon storage. I mean, you can try to play with it here, but the downfall of doing that leads us into our next gun, which is, I think this sucker was introduced in X-Force number 1. I'm not sure, but this is a big mama jamma, and I love this gun. So you actually get some scuffs on the barrel here, and it's just kind of like, why couldn't you add like a little bit of different color to it? But I'm glad that there's scrapes and shows that this thing has actually been through a war, and I just love how huge this thing is. Now, as you see, there's a whole lot there. So you spin Cable around, and that peg that we were just talking about, that's where that sits, and that's how he looks on the cover of X-Force number 1. So for this gun, you're just going to have to get kind of creative, maybe work it into the shoulder pad or something. I don't know. But at least you can kind of, again, be creative. So that's the important part. So those are the accessories. The other, I guess you could call it an accessories that Nathan has is the pads. Now in the 90s, if you weren't around, everybody wore bomber jackets and had big pouchy stuff like this. But that's how that's how I was introduced to him, and I fell in love with it. So I'm not going to do this because I hate trying to put all this stuff back on. But to take this part off, as you can see, it's loose. You just pop his head off. That comes off. There is a tiny, see right there, divot? And that's how you get it off. I don't want to do that because trying to get it back on and making sure that stays a pain in my butt. But at least you have that option in case you get tired of all the bulky 90 pouches, which, I was a child of that era. I'm okay with it. Now, as for the paint apps on the figure itself, I love that Nathan actually has his TK powers coming out of his eye. And one thing that I do want to mention is during the Age of Apocalypse, they introduced a character called X-Man. And he's like the most powerful mutant ever. And that is essentially that world's version of Cable. But, he had a different upbringing. And he's able to use his powers. He was never infected with the TK virus, so he's able to use his powers freely. I've heard it. I don't know how canon it is. Let me know down in the comments. But the reason that Cable is limited in using his mutant abilities is because he has to keep the TK virus at bay. If he slips up, that goes nuts. And that has been shown in several different comics where this just goes insane and starts to infect his body again. So let me know how off I'm on that. Say that 3 times fast. This eye, I love the battle damage, and I like the white iris there. A little bit of red just really helps make it pop. The white hair to show that, it'd help us if I actually gave you guys a focus. To make it look like he's an old man. Looks great. And then through the 90s, whenever he was in battle, he always had this big comm set on his head, which looks kind of silly, but still just adds to that, militaristic, I'm going to end the battle. I don't have time for your shenanigans. What do you want? And the shoulder pads, I think they look great. I love that worn leather look. Just really shows that it's been through the ringer. I wish they'd put some more scuffs and maybe some chips on it to show that the leather had, sun baked and whatnot, but still looks good. Pouches. Everything was about the pouches in the 90s. I love that X-Men tag here on the front. Bullets look amazing. Love that how they're just all lined up and ready to go in that big Mamma Jamma gun we talked about a moment ago. The metal on his arm looks good. Everybody thought that he was a cyborg, I think, when he first came out, but then it was, they started talking about how this was the TK virus. So I'm glad that they made sure to make it look nice and shiny. Gloves look good. Grays. Ripples where it's supposed to anatomy-wise. Flesh tones look good. And I'm like that, because he's from a very derelict place, he just has that look, because even though he does have a big heart, he can be a hard ass. The blue helps offset all these different colors. Love that rusticness of the belt. And how everything just comes together with this big 90s belt buckle. The gray militaristic pants look great. Pouches look awesome. The military boots, laces, all that good stuff. Just looks great. I like how this sort of, how military pants wear, how this kind of plumes out of the boot. Knee pads look great. Just beautiful paint apps all around. I really do think that they broke the mold for the most part on this figure. And what I mean by the most part, let's continue. So what I meant by the most part is, okay, so we got the cool trigger finger here. So we could put all these guns in, right? Over here we have an open rest hand. No way to swap it out. So with the guns, you got one hand. Come on, Hasbro. Do better. That's probably the only part that kills me, that you only get one hand to put weapons in. It's just as bad as when they give you one open hand like this and then a fist hand. It's like, what the hell were you thinking? Anyway, bitching aside. Head, surprising. With this on, head can go down that much. And you can get him to look up hella high, which is really great. He does have some play, so you can get some side-to-side motion, so you can be like, what are you looking at, bub? You can look that way, and I'm glad that these don't really hinder. You can spin 360. Just like I said, always be careful when moving your figures and always warm them up first. He does have double jointed elbows. He does have a bicep swivel. One thing about my Cable, I don't know if anybody else is having this trouble, but the joints, even though how many times I've warmed this sucker up, he is still super stiff, especially on this arm. So like even trying to do that is a chore, and trying to lift the arm up and out, hear that clack, Jesus. And even the double jointed elbow, like you can see where the joint is in here. This thing always feels like it's getting ready to give. So I can do just about that, and it scares me to do any more with it. But yeah, that is such a stiff arm, and I don't know if there's just, the amount of paint that maybe got into this mold. Let me know if you have trouble with yours. He does have spin at the waist, and then I love that, you work in between the pads, grab them, you can go down that far and that far back. That's awesome. I'm loving that range of motion on the abdomen. Legs can go out about that far, which, for a bigger guy, it's to be expected. Can kick all the way out that way. Hate that they put the damn stamp. Stop that! Put it down here. Stop it! Now back here. Again, butt flap in the way. That should be soft plastic, but at least you can kind of get a little bit. Double jointed knees. Upper thigh cut, as you see there. Boot cut. Foot go up. Foot go down. And of course, ankle pivots. So minus some of the bitches that I just said, putting those aside, overall, this is still a fantastic figure, and I'm glad that even though he's a bigger, beefier dude, you can really get a nice range of motion out of him. Here's Cable up against the Apocalypse Build-A-Figure Wave Sabretooth, the Sauron Build-A-Figure Wave X-Men Deadpool, the Juggernaut Build-A-Figure Wolverine, one of my favorites, and the Zemnu Supervillains Build-A-Figure Wave AIM Scientist. As you can see, I have the beefier ones here on the outside and then the two smaller ones on the inside. And I like that Cable, every time he's in a comic, he's always the bigger, more bulky dude. So I'm glad that he towers. Wolverine, as I've said before, is always the runt. Sabretooth's more of a big apex predator. And then this AIM scientist, Jason, forgot his name. But, he's more of a big, beefy scientist guy that's not going to take crap. So I'm glad, again, I will say that Hasbro is paying attention to scaling for the most part. There's always exceptions. But as you can see, you get them lined up. Think of this on a shelf. They're going to look absolutely amazing. And you get them in the fighting poses for photography, and you're not going to have any trouble whatsoever. They're going to look gorgeous, gorgeous. I cannot wait to start putting these guys against each other. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Overall, I absolutely love this figure. And then I do want to give a shout out to my buddy Glenn. He made me this awesome destruction base, and he put Cable on top of that, and it just makes the whole thing pop. I mean, look at this. That just screams Cable in a post-apocalyptic world, or just getting done with a fight against Apocalypse or Bishop, what have you. Just use your creativity and your imagination, and all your figures are going to look amazing. My only gripes with this Cable is, of course, they had the stamp on the thigh. They give them all these awesome guns, and they only give you one grip hand and one resting hand. Could we at least got one left-handed, gripping, so we can get options to hold all these amazing weapons? I don't know who fell asleep at the wheel that day in terms of planning the creativity of this. My only other gripe, and I don't know if this is on anybody else's Cable, as I was talking about, is how this elbow is just an SOB to bend. Every time I do it, it feels like it's gonna bust. So I have to be damn careful when I'm doing posing. Other than that, this is how I remember Cable from the 90s and X-Force, and this is how I'll always remember him. I'm thankful that I was able to get one, and it's just amazing. You put him on a shelf, you start doing photography. Either way, you put him up against Deadpool, you get the rest of the X-Force figures that we currently have, and it's just going to look so delicious. So if you have enjoyed this figure, as I said, please, first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if someone's traded it in. If not, this wave is getting harder to find, so you'll have to go through the secondary market. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel. And we love to hear your thoughts and feedbacks, and just talk with y'all down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, photo slideshow coming up next. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.